Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Libertarian Viewpoint. In this segment, we're gonna present the article suggested by Eder Sena, written by Peter Turguniev, translated into English by Marco Batalha and Lyubica Todorova, and revised and narrated by Max Guimarães. Why are Brazilians concerned about the edge of democracy? The socialist ceremony of the Oscars will be held this Sunday, February 9th. As time closes by, there is a growing buzz about the nominated movies and potential winners. Nothing unusual here. There are indeed excellent movies running up, like Honeyland, a Rio documentary filmed in Macedonia, nominated in 2 categories, as shown in a previous video here in this channel. Among the nominees for Best Movie, I enjoyed Joker and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but 1917, a story set in World War I, seems to be the best. If I could, I would vote for it. However, if any of these contenders wins, it will be well deserved. Nevertheless, in Brazil, all the fuss is about the documentary The Edge of Democracy by Petra Costa. Of course, everyone is entitled to their opinion about the movie. Leftists are in love with it and consider it a masterpiece. Right-wingers hate it with all their guts and accuse her of making stuff up. Hey, look, watching this fight between the left and the right on TV is extremely amusing. When left-wingers say that all right-wingers should be killed because they are fascists, and when all right-wingers say that left-wingers should be shot because, quote, our country's flag will never be red, end quote. I sincerely hope that both achieve their goals and kill each other all. This only shows how incoherent and clueless they are, both trying to play nice, but failing in hiding their lack of ethics. Defending the existence of a coercive government is intrinsically wrong. Any position deriving from it is inherently contradictory and unethical. But I gotta admit that the movie from that socialist director is a bunch of crap. Yes, factual lies. I'm not talking about opinion on facts. Having different opinions on the same facts is natural. When someone says, there was not enough proof to impeach the former President Dilma, this is an opinion about a fact. He or she is entitled to it. It's possible to dispute that indefinitely, but what everyone says will be valid because it's just an opinion. But the movie indeed makes things up big time. It's not possible to argue about well-documented facts. Saying that Aécio Neves, who had run for president against Dilma, was behind the impeachment is simply a plain lie. He always acted against the impeachment. During the street protests, when people were demanding that Dilma should be impeached, Aécio was sent off by the crowd because he was always acting against the impeachment in the Congress. As a matter of fact, it was the position of his party that caught the attention of many people to what the philosopher Olavo de Carvalho called the scissors strategy. Then many people said, hey, look, perhaps that crazy man from Virginia is not so crazy after all. It made the average Brazilian realize that the democratic socialists from Aécio's party is also far left, maybe just a tiny bit less socialist than Dilma's Labour Party. The director, Petra Costa, pictures Dilma's fall as a plot devised by Vice President Michel Temer and the Congress, not mentioning that what set the process in motion was the largest protests that had ever happened in Brazil. Despite these protests, Temer and the Congress didn't do anything. It took 2 years of massive protests for the parasites at the Congress, mostly far-left socialists, to do something. And center-leftists saw that as an opportunity to look good in the eyes of the voters. Moreover, the director photoshopped pictures, deliberately removing weapons from the hands of leftist activists. She also lied about unemployment rate, polls, lawsuits against Lula, the former president, and Dilma's mastermind, and so on and so forth. There are 45 factual errors in the movie. Check the link in the description. How can this piece of fiction be considered a documentary? It is only considered a documentary because it deals with the life of the director, her relationships with her family, and so on. It is a documentary about how an alienated young leftist experienced the whole process. In this sense, it's extremely educational. It is possible to notice how she forges her and her family's image as social justice warriors. Few attention is given to real facts. This is the same view I have of my leftist friends. I recall a friend of mine, with whom I used to play Pokemon, who was trying to convince everyone else in our group to vote for Haddad, another far-left politician running for president against Bolsonaro. She used to say that, if elected, Bolsonaro would kill all gay and black people, and she seemed to believe in that. I felt sorry for her. Where did she get those ideas from? She was completely oblivious to the truth. Curiously, in this group, during the electoral campaign, it was possible to see a clear division between rich socialists from the left and poor Bolsonaro supporters from the right. I live in a central neighborhood in Rio de Janeiro, so in our group there are Pokemon players from all backgrounds, from super rich intellectuals to people from the slums, from foreigners to locals who deliver food. A very eclectic lot. Of course, we tried to avoid political discussion because they are a problem when you are at tier 5 of fulfilling tasks at the game. However, during the campaign, political discussions are almost inevitable. And guess who would vote for Haddad and who would vote for Bolsonaro? Yes, you got it right. I don't need to tell you. As I pointed out when talking about political bubbles, this detachment from reality is unavoidable. For those who were following the events in Brasilia during the impeachment trials, it looked like the leftists from the rich neighborhoods were detached from reality. For these leftists, the poor right-wingers delivering food, who would vote for Bolsonaro, were the ones detached from reality. Here goes the rant. How can they vote for someone who will take their workers' right away? We have to forbid Uber Eats. Each bubble has its own set of values, so that it tends to reinforce these values in such a way that people inside it don't understand what people outside it say. Yes, I know that some people consider this an inorganic movement. They think that the left is planning all this, that there is a communist central planner setting this narrative and coordinating an army of useful idiots to spread the narrative. Look, leftists are more prone to hierarchical structures than right-wingers. But believe me, they're not smart enough to do that. The leftism of bored, rich people is spontaneous, not planned. There may be some planning in some specific actions, but most of it is spontaneous. A famous journalist named Pedro Bial made some criticism to the movie, which is essentially correct. The movie doesn't make any sense, presents a bunch of ideas, but the conclusions do not stem from the premises. He could have also said that facts had been changed. Okay, I must admit that some of his criticism was exaggerated. He said that Petra was acting as a child who is trying to please her mother and that she has an annoying voice and so on. At this moment, I had the impression that Bial holds some grudge with regards to Petra, but that's not unexpected in that environment. They look more like fourth graders arguing in school. If I were the teacher, I would ground them both. But apart from this, Pedro Bial was spot on. She is talking to her bubble and no one else. It is good to know that there are still people in the traditional media with a minimally unbiased point of view. No, he's not a libertarian or a right-winger. Of course, if he's rich, he's probably a socialist, but at least he has some common sense. He may lean towards this or that side, but he's not in the leftist bubble. Don't fool yourself though, no one is completely neutral. No one can see all points of view. We are all in bubbles. It's just the way it goes. It's a fact that we humans have been molded by billions of years of natural evolution to maintain relationships with groups of 50 to 200 people who constituted our tribes or group of hunter-gatherers for most of our history. In this aspect, even if you have the capacity to easily converse with any of the billions of people who have access to the internet, Simply said, you wouldn't manage to do so. Your brain cannot handle it. Yes, it's possible. Automatic translators are a reality. So are communication systems that encompass the whole world. The limit is within our mental capacity, and this is not going to change that soon, because it took millions of years for us to get to the level we are today. Additionally, we have the tendency to feel better around people who think like us. Therefore, naturally, now that both physical and local barriers no longer exist, we can end up privileging this point and filling the bulk in our circle of 200 people with people who think alike. Add to that another point. The human language is positional, or rather, when we speak, we don't communicate the whole information we want to pass on. That would be impossible, because we would have to explain even the meaning of the words. When we say something to someone, we pass on merely the difference to the information we understand that the other person already has. For instance, I suppose that you already know the English language, what some of the terms mean, to get the information you want. All human communication is like that, based on a delta, an information differential. Now, when people within a group talk among themselves, they naturally develop their own values and definitions. Like, when I talk about level 5 raid in a Pokemon group, everyone already knows what I mean. This same term has different meanings in other groups, in other games, and even, for instance, in military strategies. As each bubble focuses on communication among its members, then, for those who are not in the bubble, it increasingly seems that the outside person is talking nonsense. This was precisely Pedro Bial's point. Petracosta's speech is full of non sequitur, that is, it maintains a lot of conclusions that cannot be drawn from the given premises. As it happens, leftists don't see it that way, because for them, the information differential, starting from the base information they have, is one that fits. For everyone else in other bubbles, it's delusional madness. Yet, it makes sense to them. And it makes sense to the American left as well. As I said, the similar thinking today, the moral values and ideologies bring us closer than the geographical location would. You'd feel much more comfortable talking to a Japanese guy on the other side of the world who thinks like you than you would with your neighbor who's in a different bubble. This leads us to the obvious conclusion that, with decentralized and cheap information, bubble formation is inevitable. It's about time for us to migrate to legal structures adequate for our current social structures. It makes no sense to have a legal order defined by territory, since the territory now contains people of different bubbles. The rightful thing is to have a legal order focused on people's ideology, independent of geographical location, which is the so-called private law society. Everyone joins the private government they fit in, chooses the constitution and the laws they prefer, regardless of where they physically are. Technically, all of the services provided by geographically defined governments, as we have today, contrary to common sense, can be equally well provided by private voluntary governments without a given geographic reach. Absolutely everything: safety, roads, laws, assistance to those in need. Better yet, with competition among the governments, you'd be able to choose the one which provides the best services for your money in a market. Something that would solve the basic problem of dictatorial and inefficient governments that we have today. The private law society is the future, and Capistan is coming. That's it, folks. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to give your thumbs up and share it. Subscribe to the channel and click on the bell to be notified of new videos. If you'd like to help the channel, become a member by clicking on the Join button below. You will have access to the sponsor's Discord channel, where we talk about the topics and hang out from time to time. See you soon in the following episodes.